Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hi, this is Nick Anastasiou, story editor on Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Bad Batch. And you are listening to Aggressive Negotiations.
Welcome to Aggressive Negotiations from the Crystal Mountains of Christophsis. I am just one of your hosts here, Matthew Rushing, and with me as he is every single week on this beautiful journey we call Star Wars love is the one and only John Mills.
Okay. I'm wondering now, because everybody remembers or knows about the $2 billion, I think it was a $2 billion deal that Pepsi signed for the Phantom Menace, right? The merchandising deal?
Yeah, something like that.
With Christophsis and the Crystal Mountains. They missed a perfectly good opportunity to bring back Crystal Pepsi. I don't know why they didn't.
Absolutely.
Aside from the fact that Crystal Pepsi was disgusting, I don't know why you wouldn't do that. It just doesn't make any sense.
I don't know why. I mean, you're absolutely right. You know, they totally should, and it would have been wonderful, but they didn't. But if you want to talk about wonderful things, man, catch up with us all over the place, especially on social media. We would love to talk to you. Of course, you can find us on Twitter at The Jedi Masters. The entire network is at Join Nerd Party. You can also find us online at thenerdparty.com. We've got Instagram, of course, at The Nerd Party. And then you can also go over to Facebook at facebook.com/The Nerd Party. And maybe you'd like to send John and I an email. We do love getting emails, and they inspire shows sometimes. So write us over at thenerdparty.com/contact and send your email to John and I there. So, John, one of the things we were kind of talking about the other day, and it kind of spurred the thought for this discussion, is that there are just so many different battles, obviously, that happen in a show and or film series called Star Wars. And we were talking about just kind of some of the favorite battles that come to mind in the saga. And so I wanted to know from you, like, when I say Star Wars battle, what is the first one that comes to mind for you?
I can honestly say the first one that comes to mind is the Battle of Coruscant in Episode 3. I grew up with Star Wars. I loved all of the battles, all of that stuff. I'm a full-grown adult who's married by the time Episode 3 comes out, and I remember being blown away in the theater and feeling like a little kid again watching it, saying, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And to this day, I think it's the best opening to the original 6 movies. I think it's everything, and it's everything that makes an on-screen spectacle like Star Wars mind-boggling, because you can sit there and you can peel apart all of those layers and look and see so much stuff going on in the background. There's so much that's layered. There's so much happening, but you're never confused, and your eye is never confused.
Yep.
Which is a stunning achievement. I know where they're flying, how they're getting there, all of that stuff, and I feel tension, and I feel like the entire thing communicates everything about our heroes and the situation that they're in with minimal dialogue, perfect music execution, and even to the point of feeling something for Anakin when he wants to go back and save the clones. Like, there's so much packed into that battle, and I think it's just such a masterful work on screen that that's the first one that pops to mind. What about you?
You know, I think, as you're mentioning that, it's an incredible battle, and one of the things that really strikes me about that battle and how much important it is really is it goes to show just how much Palpatine is willing to wag the dog to sell this. Like, he's willing to throw hundreds of thousands of lives away for this in the battle we see there. I mean, with the amount of ships that are being destroyed, the amount of wreckage that would have landed on Coruscant because of this, I mean, it's just the loss of civilian life would be a catastrophic for the amount of damage that would have happened with even just stray bolts from ships and everything. So I heartily agree. It is phenomenal. I don't think it's going to come in as any surprise to anybody that probably the first one that comes to mind for me is Hoth.
Sure.
In the Battle of Hoth. Obviously, too, it's not just the movie, but it's the fact that every single Star Wars video game seems to want to make you play the Battle of Hoth again, even though you've done it 1,000 times in every other video game. And so that one comes to mind. And obviously, too, I do remember being that kid sitting in front of the television screen, because that's where I saw Star Wars, being mesmerized at what they were able to create back in the 80s there. And it still is phenomenal today. I mean, I think that's the thing that just boggles my mind. Even when I pop it in on the 4K, it still looks great and it still holds up. And I think that's a testament to filmmaking, and everything that Lucas and, of course, Irving Kershner and the guys at ILM were willing to do. I mean, pushing the boundaries there of what we would consider almost impossible at that point. To do a special effects battle against a white background was just unheard of at that point.
Well, I mean, you have the people had attempted stuff like that before, but it was always rear projection and it always looked kind of crappy. And
Right.
You're going to have to bleep me here because I too love the Battle of Hoth, of course. I mean, who doesn't? I can put on the music from that. I much prefer the unedited music that appears on those soundtracks. So for some reason, they haven't remastered and re-released in recent times, because who likes making money? And
I mean, not
it's so
Disney.
silly. Why wouldn't you release them? Why? But You talk about recreating the Battle of Hoth in every single video game, and it's true. And I just wish that there was some way to make some sort of parody of the Battle of Hoth with what I imagine are the typical reactions, which I think would be embodied by my reaction whenever trying to get the cable around the walker's legs and something goes wrong and the cable like resets or snaps off early or something like that. And we're going to have to bleep here and everything, but just that whole thing of just somebody hitting the control panel and going, son of a, right? Like just that,
Yeah.
because the ones we see on screen, hey, they go off without a hitch. Hoth is magnificently edited. And what's interesting about it is it's so perfectly done in terms of the music. And the only thing about it, because I mean, we've all seen it thousands of times, is there's one shot in particular that I love pointing at to people, is there's one single shot on that battlefield where you see troopers from the Empire rushing toward the trenches. There are like 3 of them. And it's one shot, and it drives me nuts every time, because then I jump forward to the Battle of Geonosis, which is a battle I love, but I don't love as much as I love the one on Hoth, because the one on Hoth is very simple, brutal. The music is there. There's no music on Geonosis. But I do understand the urge of wanting to finally see tons of troopers, because that, I think, sort of reveals some of the limitation of budget and scope.
Oh, yeah.
In 1980 is you feel like there could be a little bit more happening in terms of troop-to-troop combat. And I think that's the itch that Lucas is trying to scratch with the Battle of Geonosis and Attack of the Clones. But, more power to Hoth. I think Hoth pulls it off better. Just because I think one of the odd choices for the Battle of Geonosis was no music, or rather sporadic music. There were hits of music here and there, but it doesn't have that driving score that has, you put on the Battle of Hoth music by itself and you feel not scared, because but you feel that your blood pressure goes up because it has that lumbering, and you get that sense like that's Williams at peak, just playing on that amygdala and making you terrified in that moment. So yeah, I mean, Hoth is I mean, I find it interesting The first one I went for was a space battle. The first one you went for was a land battle. So I wonder if do you think that there's a personality aspect as to which type of battle a person is drawn to first?
I don't know. I mean, that's a great question. It's because, the next battle that I was kind of thinking of, and there are there are so many you could choose from, but, I got to pull out the Clone Wars movie and having two incredible battles on land. One is the Battle of Christophsis, which, I mean, immediately lets you know that this is not going to be your normal kids' cartoon. When clone troopers are getting mowed down and hit in the face and falling down dead, I mean, it's just an insanely awesome battle. Watching, Anakin Skywalker jump from the ledge of a building and, land on a droid walker thing and, take it apart one piece at a time, all of that's just incredible. And then, of course, the Battle of Teth, which is just an awesome battle, which allows us to see, these Republic walkers do something that the Imperial walkers could never do. And, of course, the fun experience of watching Anakin and Ahsoka start to create a relationship of one-upmanship, and just Anakin jumping from, speeder to speeder. Like the whole, it was, people make fun of that movie, but so much of that movie was, again, doing everything that a Star Wars film would normally do, which was take what has been given and move it one step further, and this one really, because it's animated, it allowed the battles to be even bigger and bolder in ways that you probably would never even thought of doing in live action. And I think adding something to the visual language of Star Wars at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting because Battle of Teth, I think, has also some of the best music of a battle in Star Wars. Battle of Christophsis, though, I do remember seeing it, and I still, when I hear the cue or when I see it happen in the film, that establishing moment of Anakin when he looks over his shoulder and he says, "Follow me," right? That is, it still gives me goosebumps because I instantly connect with the character at that moment. That's speaking to that little 12-year-old child that wants to be the hero.
Yep.
And survive the foolish act and those sorts of things. I think both of those battles are great. When I think of Clone Wars battles, like if I divert over to Clone Wars, I do wind up going to a land battle first, but it's the battle on Umbara. I think is fantastic because it really achieves what Lucas was setting out to do with some of the allegory in Star Wars and give that sense of the Vietnam conflict of troopers in a foreign environment they weren't equipped to handle. They've got all of this high-tech equipment, but they cannot overcome the natural obstacles because they just don't belong there. Felucia, we get a glimpse of it in Episode 3. But Clone Wars really leaned into those sorts of things. And I just think Umbara is so perfectly representative of that commentary that Lucas was going for about conflicts like Vietnam or Afghanistan, where you have these troops and they're ordered there and they're trying to do their jobs and they're not necessarily bad people. They're just doing what they do. And they're in way over their heads. Nobody wants to be there. They don't understand why they're fighting like this. And then they come to find out that the people running the show aren't even trustworthy or competent necessarily. Like it's so baked into everything and just the visuals of that. And I just think it's also really, I think it's one of the most visually unrestrained moments in the Clone Wars where they were willing to get really weird with the way things looked and functioned on a planet. And I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I think that is a great pull. And I also think, that's Lucas's closest thing to doing Apocalypse Now as well, and really his homage. And didn't even John Milius help out in those episodes? If I remember
I know
correctly, am I wrong?
Murch directed one. And Murch edited
Okay.
Apocalypse Now.
I think that's what I was thinking
sure.
of, is that Murch had come in, and that makes total sense that it feels so close to that.
Well, and what's interesting too is because you're right to call it out, because the Jedi who goes bad, who goes evil, who becomes corrupted by the war itself, that does echo Colonel Kurtz in Apocalypse Now completely.
Yep.
And so yes, that's definitely baked into it.
Yeah, I always think too. It's hard. There's so many great battles, of course, in the Clone Wars, but one that really comes to mind as well is the Battle of Point Rain, when they go back to Geonosis, and I think really, it's just such an expansive battle, and you have so many Jedi involved in that, and it's kind of a mess, and it's not going great. And of course, that's where, you get the brain worms and everything. And there's so many different parts of that whole battle, which I love, I think is great. And so, the Clone Wars really is rife with battles that really, I think, begin to take what you had been able to do in the films, and then they just make them that much bigger. And so, I think I would be remiss, which we hate being on the show, if I didn't also mention the wonderful battle at Endor in space. Obviously that was, again, a place where ILM completely just ramped it up, what they can do, and again, still looks gorgeous when you think about the limitations you have with still working on having to film each model individually and then layer them all in together. And I mean, it's beautiful, and it's still kind of a hallmark of, I'd say, a benchmark for what Star Wars battles in space look like.
Yeah, I love the Battle of Endor. I absolutely adore it. I think that every cut is judicious. I think that it goes so far toward the idea of creating what you're trying to tell in the editing room, knowing what cuts to make, and imagining the amount of footage that was shot, because they put this on some of the behind the scenes stuff. They shot people in the gun wells. They shot people running around doing repairs on the Falcon. They shot other stuff. They actually shot, in case the Admiral Akbar puppet didn't work out well, they actually had General Madine filmed as a backup sort of thing, and actually crashing his ship into the Super Star Destroyer. They had that option on the table for them, and then just deciding what made sense to put together. And I think that it's absolutely brilliant, and it's absolutely wonderful. But if I'm going to be super critical about it, it's a reason why I wind up loving the Battle of Coruscant so much. Is if you look at the Battle of Endor right now, I adore it. I think it's magnificent, and everything you said about being an achievement, but it violates at points that idea of always knowing where I am in relation to other things. Now, it gets away with it because I know that they're just intercutting, people getting hit. They're showing different points in the battle. But I almost wonder if there is an aspect to not just Lucas, but the people who worked on it at ILM, who might have been baked into them, the effects people themselves, wanting to go back and tweak, like after they got 6 months of sleep after working 24-hour shifts filming things. If they saw it all come together and they say, "Wow, that's really neat," but you know what I wish I would have done. I've got to imagine that's there, but you don't think any of that while you're watching it is the thing. And I think that I think somebody who doesn't get enough credit for holding it all together is actually Billy D. Williams. Just like Luke sells Yoda, Mark Hamill's performance in The Empire Strikes Back is the one that sells the puppet.
Right.
Billy D. Williams in that cockpit helps sell Nine Nub perfectly.
Yep.
And it's amazing. And nobody gives him, I think, enough credit for that. And I also love the fact that you can actually see engineers in the Falcon. You can actually see somebody in the cockpit running side to side, keeping things running. And so you're seeing the Falcon with an actual crew on board, which is fun because we're used to just seeing Han and Chewie on there and everything like that. But sorry, I know I'm rambling, but like I adore the Battle of Endor. I absolutely do. I think that's a great choice. Absolutely. So you and I, we obviously have our favorites here. I've got to ask, is there a battle in Star Wars, be it Clone Wars, be it Rebels, be it the films, and I'll cop to this too. My brain will go to the films immediately because I experienced all of those larger than life on the big screen, and I have to work a little harder sometimes to remember, in the forefront other stuff, other media. But is there a battle you think where it was ambitious, but it was too ambitious, where it didn't work as well as it should have? Is there a battle where you look at it and you go, yeah, it's okay, but this could have stood another pass?
Yes, there's one that comes to thought immediately. Episode 9.
The space battle.
That final battle at the end, it's quite ambitious. But when you have 40 billion things happening on screen at one time, I'm not quite sure that you're going to get what you want. And that battle, I think the when you get to it, the intention and the thought process behind it of like basically, the galaxy coming together to say, no, this isn't happening again is great, right? The thematic thought behind that is fantastic. But I think it turns into visual soup because there's so many things on screen at one time that you can't make anything out, right? There is a point to where less is more when it comes to how many ships you have on screen at one time. And more is not always better. And I absolutely think that is a case in point for more is not better.
Yeah, and we're not going to end on a down note, folks. We're going to pull back around to an up note after this. Trust me. This is the closing of the second act, and we'll come back strong before we bow out. But
yeah, this is like the end of The Empire Strikes Back for you guys.
I will actually say, and I know people will roll their eyes. They'll feel like we're picking on the sequel trilogy, but I agree with your assessment. I agree with your assessment of the battle in Episode 9. I was actually largely disengaged while I was watching it. I knew what the outcome was going to be. There was no tension to it for me. And then add in the fact that I had no idea visually who's there in relation to what and things that are going on. And then the cool thing happens, but I'm not quite, and then I'm over to another thing. And it's like, well, it sort of has
yep.
It's like it has attention deficit. It can't pick what it wants to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
But
sure.
I would say probably my least favorite battle in the big screen stuff, at least, is the Salt Planet Crate in The Last Jedi, just because it plays so much like the scene in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, where the two guards are looking and Lancelot is running in the distance, and they keep looking and Lancelot is always in the distance, and then all of a sudden he's on top of them. And there's this spatial disconnect that happens. That's a bit disappointing because Star Wars has such a great tradition around it of respecting and understanding the way the physics of it needs to work. Even though, yes, I know sound in space, lightsabers, all of that. Oh, how can I talk about physics? But like, I'm talking about that spatial dynamic, understanding how long it's going to take to get from point A to point B and respecting that as something that needs to happen.
Yep. No, I 100% agree with that. I think you've nailed it completely on that. And, you know, again, I hate to pick on the sequel trilogy, but I from the beginning, you can go back and listen to our review on the 602 Club. But the Force Awakens battle at you know, Starkiller Base is another version of visual soup. I mean, it just like it feels muddy. It's unclear as to what's happening. You never have a good idea of where you are physically in the space. And it just never worked for me. So, you know, I think that is a disappointment. And before people just say we're picking on the sequel trilogy, you know, I mean, I think you were absolutely right to kind of call out, I wish the Battle of Geonosis had more music in it. I think it would have been better for it. And I think that was one of those places where there was a little bit too much of an over-reliance on sound effects to sell everything. And that's kind of what made the arena battle great, is when the music came in, you know? And so definitely they're trying something there, but it doesn't always completely work for me. So, you know, I mean, it's across the spectrum. Part of it is, you know, people are trying things and they're trying to see how things are going to work. Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. And that's okay. You know, I mean, at least I would say in all of these instances, I can see the intention behind them all, right? And what they're going for. They just don't always work well. And
to deliver that up note, and I know that this is a movie that you and I are, you know, our famous meltdowns over it and stuff like that, and are butting our heads and everything. But I do think that Rogue One actually speaks to, if I were to do the Battle of Endor today with today's technology, how would that play?
That's a great point.
And I think that's as close as you're ever going to get to it. And that's why I think the end of Rogue One plays so well and redeems anything that misfires earlier in the movie, is because that is an absolutely masterful battle and very clear, very beautifully constructed. Where I am at any point in the battle is very clear because I have fixed points against which to rely. I have an interesting land battle going on at the same time. And so it almost feels like this recapitulation of Return of the Jedi with modern technology. And it's pretty darned interesting. And it's there's a reason everybody walked out of that movie, and regardless of how many stars they gave it, they said, yeah, but that ending, wow, that was something else. And, you know, I hope that everybody involved in it took a good victory lap, and especially for putting a Hammerhead Corvette in there. So, you know, that was good.
I think that was one of those moments, too, where, like you said, it was the modern version of Return of the Jedi, because you have the land battle happening, you have the space battle happening, and you have the personal battle happening. But you've got all the modern effects happening at the same time, and it's just gorgeous, you know. And then, I mean, of course, that's where, too, you know, we get Darth Vader rampaging down a hallway, which is just phenomenal. So, no, I think you're absolutely right. You know, I mean, Rogue One, like you said, and obviously we've had our battles over that movie, but you've always been very consistent in being like, yeah, the last 40 minutes, though, just, you know, kicked my butt on how great they were, you know? And so it kind of, like you said, it redeemed the movie for you in so many ways to have that and get to that point. And that's one of those parts of, like, I think, you know, lots of these Star Wars battles, you can go in and you could pop in and watch just the battle, you know? That's definitely one. You sit there, carve out 40 minutes and just watch that whole end. It's so great.
Which actually, just as a quick interjection, is something where I think Star Wars movies would especially benefit from this, because we all love to revisit the battles when we don't necessarily have 2 hours of time and everything like that. And I wish that streaming had chapter skipping, as opposed to just having to fast forward through everything, because it's almost as if that's the one bit of technology that has kicked us back to videotape times where I can't. Oh no, stop, no, okay, rewind 5 minutes, rewind 5, and go again. And I'd like chapter skipping introduced in streaming if anybody can ever figure out how to do it, which I think they should be able to, considering that can be done with digital files, with podcasts and stuff like that. You would think that we could have chapter skipping on streaming at this point.
Yeah.
But hey, what are you going to do?
I'm going to pause here just real quick to tell you something really cool. So I had put in my Instagram story, congratulations to Gina Carano.
Oh no.
About her, she put my story in her story.
Please tell her I love her if she sends you a note.
So I just thought that was
awesome.
Cool. One of the things that we hadn't talked about was, the live action show of The Mandalorian. And I feel like there's a battle in there that I want to call out, of course, from the finale of, the season 2, which is the Battle of Luke rampaging down a hallway just like his dad. And that was an incredible battle. I loved that battle. And even before that, you had the team up of Bo-Katan and Fennec Shan and, oh, God, what's her name? Dang it.
Cara Dune and... Yeah, I forget her name too.
Yeah, I've just got to look it up. Cara Dune and Koska Reeves, just like blasting through all of those droids. I mean, I think that's phenomenal. And so that episode was great. And I mean, that show alone has had some incredible battles, obviously a lot smaller in scope, but I think just as impactful.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that's a really good battle. I do think that it also does a really great job. Peyton Reed should take a bow for the fact that episode really builds the tension expertly well with the Death Troopers and everything like that. And
why isn't he getting a Star Wars film to direct, John?
It's a good question, Matt. I don't know.
I mean, heck, can I just say, like, just about anybody who's directed The Mandalorian should be getting a movie to direct. Seriously, they've all proven themselves.
I don't disagree at all. This is going to sound really silly, but especially if you're going to go small scale, I would say probably, as much as I love the season 2 finale battle that you're talking about, I absolutely love the Mandalorian's battle through the town when he's trying to leave with Grogu in the first season, and the
sin,
and the other Mandalorians show up to bail him out like that.
Yes,
no, but just the single gunfighter going through fighting the whole town, like that's such a brilliant Western moment, and it's so perfectly paced and directed. And you want to talk about just a clear sense of stakes and geography through that whole thing, and it's just brilliantly done. Just absolutely masterful. Love it to death. And that's the thing, right? I was talking about this over on House Lights about good is good. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we all want the best film format. We all, definitely respect filmmakers' wishes and stuff like that. but good is good. And whether I encounter it for the first time on a television screen or a movie screen, it's going to captivate me if it's done really, really well. And so if I had seen the last battle in Rogue One on TV for the first time, I still would have been hooked. And it wouldn't have mattered. It just gets better when it's in the format that it was made for. But
oh yeah,
talking about Mandalorian or talking about Clone Wars, you have instances where you have moments. And I think Bad Batch has had some terrific battle moments in it as well. And so I'm thrilled to see what they do moving it forward, as you know, as they've found their feet and they're ready to rock and roll. That's going to be an interesting sort of thing. I look forward to its future with great anticipation.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think one of the things that this shows is that this is a hallmark of Star Wars, right? That every single part of Star Wars, and whatever format it's been in on screen, this is a big part of it. And you need these parts to shine if it's going to feel like it fits within the saga. And what I love is that, honestly, and this is what I kind of think is amazing is, you know, in all honesty, we could continue to go on and on and on because there are so many different places to which this happens. And I think that's really cool. And it, you know, I would love for, you know, fans and listeners, John, to tell us what their favorite, you know, episodes and battles are. So if they wanted to catch up with you, John, you know, where could they find you?
Well, you can find me prowling about the battlefield of social media as Kessel Junkie, KESSELJUNKIE. Feel free to connect. That's my name. I try to have it on as many platforms as makes sense. Letterboxd is the most fun because I love talking about movies, as everybody knows. And speaking of talking about movies, I mentioned earlier House Lights, which is a show over here on the Nerd Party Network that I co-host with Tristan Riddell and Darren Moser, and we talk about directors and their whole body of work, either from beginning to finish, if that's a manageable sum, or in segments, breaking it up by decades and stuff like that. And you know, you can find me appearing on Snyder Cuts, which is a show that I had a great time doing with you, Matt, over on the 602 Club feed for TFM. And we're still teasing that little project that we're going to have that's coming out this fall that I think is going to both please and enrage plenty of people on that feed. So, but speaking of that, another place that I love to appear is on the 602 Club, which is your flagship show over on TFM Network.
That is correct, John. You know, I love being over there on the 602 Club talking about all the fandoms we love. You know, we cover everything from Star Wars to Marvel to everything kind of in between. DC, Bond. I mean, like, the list just goes on and on. So I hope that people will join us over there. And, of course, like you said, Snyder Cuts is in that same feed as we did that walk through Zack Snyder's films. And, well, you became a Zack Snyder fan. So, you know, if people want to check out and see how that happened, that's a great place to go. Of course, if people wanted to find me on social media, they could do that under the name MattRushing02. Pretty much every single social media platform. In fact, every social media platform that I am on, that name is what you will find me under. And then, of course, here on the network, John, I did Owl Post with Dre Kaufman. We talked about Harry Potter each and every week, one chapter at a time. So if people want to catch up with that series, they can do that anytime. It's an evergreen series, so I hope they'll do that. But, John, you know, I hear that dinner bell for the Jedi Temple just ringing, and I don't know about you, but I'm a little bit hungry, so I think it's time to close these negotiations.
You want to see a battle? Get in line for the Bantha steak. Master Rushing, negotiations are closed.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.